had been transformed into a giant theme park. Surreal images were capturing our attention at 45 miles an hour. We were on the move, and driving had become one of the great entertainments of all time.
People would give up their food almost rather than give up their cars. Gas was cheap, and better roads were being built. It wasn't long before the people who owned land along those roads began to see gold floating along the highway.
There were commercial opportunities no one had ever dreamed of. In a country where a third of all homes were without indoor plumbing, certified restrooms became a major attraction.
Nurses would go from gas station to gas station and would be there to ensure the cleanliness of the place. It would bring people in if you had advertised restrooms, and people would stop and be bound to buy gasoline while they were there.
For the hungry, mom-and-pop restaurants turned up everywhere. Every meal an adventure. Hot chili, foot-long dogs, chicken fried steak. Those who hated surprises found comfort under an orange roof.
Howard Johnson combined the little hot dog stand with the ice cream parlor with the full-service restaurant. If you saw that familiar sign, you know that if you found one in Boston or you found one on Long Island, you'd get the same good food. It was predictable.
Some were so attached to their cars they never wanted to get out of them.
Merchants put two and two together and began to see that not only could you drive in the car, but you could eat in the car. It wasn't very long before that famous person called a car hop would come when you tooted your horn, take your order, and bring out the food and serve it right in the car.
There were other places like that all up and down the highway system, providing food for people who were in a hurry. And a little later, a couple of brothers by the name of McDonald opened their own place out in San Bernardino, California. The rest, as they say, is history.
At the height of the Depression, millions of Americans hit the road, not for fun, but in a desperate search for work. The film, The Grapes of Wrath, told their story.
In the Soviet Union, the communist authorities imported this movie, and they withdrew it from the theaters within a few weeks because the audience was more impressed by the fact that even wandering peasants seemed to own an automobile or a vehicle of their own than the fact that they didn't seem to have very much.
As we took to wandering farther and farther, the road was marked by tourist cottages, some more fanciful than others. Joy Fischel's parents and grandparents built one of the early tourist courts when she was a little girl.
They named the camp Camp Joy. As far as I know, just because it had a happy sound to it and was a pleasant place.
Camp Joy was a family-run motel where everyone had to work.
When I was 12, the folks set me up in business for myself. From their trips to Florida, my grandfather in the winter would ship a barrel, say, of selected shells back. And they were snapped up because back then seashells were quite a novelty.
The first motels were informal, homey places, often extensions of somebody's house. Over time, they became more businesslike. Then in the 30s, they began to install inner spring mattresses, radios, hot showers. More creature comforts than many people had back home. Camp Joy introduced the ultimate convenience, a drive-in motel room.
There were big wooden sliding doors that literally opened up one whole wall so that you could open the car door, step right into your room. And people really appreciated this.
The Fischels catered to a family business. Other motels had quite a different reputation. Some were known as ideal love nests for the hot pillow trade. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover called motels camps of crime, hideouts for hardened criminals, prostitutes, and white slavers.
Gangsters, everyday robbers, anybody that was interested in a life of doing no good saw the benefits of doing it by car.
In the 1930s, high on the 10 most wanted list were bank robbers Pretty Boy Floyd and the team of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. One night in Lebanon, Missouri, they were all holed up at Camp Joy.
They stayed in one of the drive-ins, so they couldn't be identified from the street. Their behavior while they were there was a little strange, because only one of them at a time would come out, walk up the road somewhere, get something to eat, and bring back food to the unit and go in. That'd be the last you'd see of them. The local sheriff heard that they were in this area, but they had already moved on.
Every criminal, it seemed, had a car of choice. For Clyde Barrow, it was the Ford V8. He loved this car for its quick acceleration. In a letter to Henry Ford, Barrow wrote, "While I still have breath in my lungs, the V8 is a dandy car." Clyde Champion Barrow would go to his death in his beloved Ford V8.
Hudson, at that time, was building a car called the Terraplane, which John Dillinger favored. He wrote a letter to Hudson saying, "Whenever I can steal one, I do."
In the mid-1930s, car owners became obsessed with speed. Cars could now go over 85 miles an hour, and the auto industry was moving into a revolutionary era.
The automobile went from this wonderful, old, elegant, classic thing overnight to streamlining. It was truly a new era, and America couldn't wait. You couldn't bring it to America fast enough.
In all the great design shops, artists were sculpting cars of the future. Streamlining. It was a marriage between art and aerodynamics. The first streamlined production car, the Chrysler Airflow.
The car was truly aerodynamic. It had been tested in the wind tunnel. The Chrysler Airflow was a masterpiece of engineering. The structure of the car was part of the body, not a frame, which was very safe and very lightweight. The passengers were moved forward, so they sat between their wheels and had a wonderful ride compared to anything they had ever had before.
Chrysler promoted the car's construction, its toughness and reliability.
Here it comes on its death drop, leaping clear of the ledge. You'd expect it to be crushed like an eggshell, and a lesser car would.
The Airflow was clearly an extraordinary car.
The car that can live through such a grueling ordeal is the car you can trust.
But for all its toughness, most people thought the Airflow just plain ugly. Only 30,000 were ever sold. But the move towards the modern was not to be stopped. Cars, trains, planes, buildings appeared, all with futuristic lines.
Streamlining. Suddenly this became a household word, and what it really amounted to was a cleaning up of design, of bringing all of the disparate, different elements together as a unity.
In the winter of 1935, a car was introduced that would later be described as rolling sculpture. E.L. Cord, who financed the Duesenberg's fabulous Model J just a few years before, introduced the 810 Cord. It would make automotive history. One critic said it looked as if it had been born and raised on the highway.
There was more innovation in that car than any car that ever came out. It was totally new, totally different, and everything else after that paled. It influenced design of many, many cars. And what I loved about that car, it was so simple. Simple and beautiful and low and understated, but it was just new and fresh.
The wonderful thing about those days was that you could differentiate a car from 2 blocks away. You could tell by the radiator configuration, any number of things, because the cars had their own special individual look. There was not a cookie-cutter look to cars in those days.